Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Leverage Your Podcast show. Now, normally I talk about, being a host, being a guest on podcasts, but today we're actually going to focus it on others that are working within the podcast industry, like myself. It's a totally growing field, but also if you're running an agency in general, I know my guest Melissa Morris will bring a ton of value. She's an agency consultant and is going to help us get out of overwhelm because being and having an agency and being a service provider, you are juggling so many things. Am I right, Melissa?
All the things. So then they feel like chainsaws and flames at times. I know.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So let me first ask, like, that's the whole thing, right? Is overwhelm. Like, there's so much day to day. There's operations, there's your team, there's your clients, there's your own marketing. Like, and I know I've battled with this myself for years. It's like, how do I get myself out of the equation for those day to day operations so that I'm not so stressed out?
Yeah, this it's a really tough growing pain moment for agency owners, right? Where you're building the team, you're trying to get out of client delivery, where, likely when you first started your business or agency, you were still very much in client delivery. Maybe depending on how far back we're looking, you were the only person doing client delivery. But eventually we got to get you to that point where you're the agency owner and less of your time is actually focused down in the weeds and in the tasks and the doing. And you're really focused on business development, being a leader, and looking at the way ahead for what your agency will look like and how it will serve and operate in this world. And that transition can feel tough. And I have noticed there's a moment, right? And I'm sure you felt this and others listening have felt it too, where suddenly things are getting bigger and you just can't quite keep your arms around it anymore. And you find yourself awake thinking, oh, did that thing get done? Oh, am I supposed to do? Did so and so follow up about the X, Y, and Z? Who do I need to hire? Who's in the right roles? I hate my clients. I love my clients. I hate them again. It just can feel very, very confusing.
Yes, you nailed it
Um,
on the head.
yeah, and it's really common. So for anybody out there who's, nodding their head, I can say all this because when I worked in agencies for 10 years, a little been there, done that for sure. I run my own business now, right? Have had to move through this, and I work with so many agency owners who tell me the exact same things. So I have put together a top framework, and it really focuses on what I see as the four main pillars that help an agency really put the foundations in place to start sustainably scaling. And so I like to think about those as like the four legs of a table. If you've ever been out at a restaurant and one of those table legs isn't as long as the other and it's wobbly, everyone's a little nervous for the whole meal, right? Like drinks are spilling, no one orders the soup. It's like stop banging the table, right? Like, and everybody's just holding their breath just a little bit, waiting for the mess to happen. But when all the table legs are nice and sturdy and stable, right? Everything's feeling good. Pile on the drinks and the appetizers and everything feels good. Like no one's worried, right? And the same thing is true in your agency. If one of these pillars, if one of these legs isn't where it's supposed to be, man, things feel real shaky and they feel real wobbly. But we can get those all working really well and everything feels really sound. That table is sturdy and we can just continue to scale and build and add onto it without any fear.
It's a great analogy. And so, of course, next I'm going to ask you, what do they stand for? What are the legs?
Yeah. So top TOPP. So the T is for team. O is going to be your offers. P are your processes, and then the second P is your pipeline. So when we can really get all of these pieces working well, that sustainable scaling is coming in. We can manage what we have. We can predict what's coming down the line. We can
Right.
understand our capacity. And a lot of the questions and confusion that we're dealing with just fades away. Like we start to really see and understand how we're going to break through to next income levels, start getting more time back, right? Like let's stop working 50 or 60 maybe more, we won't say it out loud, hours per week, and start backing that down to where we really wanted to be.
Yeah, that makes sense when you say it. And normally you don't necessarily think as an agency about your pipeline, about your offers and how they fit into the situation. But like again, I've been there in the past, and especially now that the podcasting industry is growing so much,
Mhm.
and a lot of agencies are getting a flood of clients, which is
Mhm.
fantastic. You think you should
Yeah.
be happy, but you're scrambling again, processes, your
Mhm.
team, hiring, and you're like, burning the candles at both ends. So before we get into team and operations, sorry, team and processes, because I
Offers. Yeah.
know those are very
Okay. Yeah.
important. Can you help us wrap our head around how the offers and the pipelines kind of fit into that puzzle?
Yeah, that's a great question because I don't think that's something that often stands out to people as a big part of this equation. But it really, really is because when we think about it, if we are getting ourselves set up and say a project management tool, and that's part of the tools, because all of these pieces really work together, right?
Yeah.
So we have our processes. A lot of times what happens is I'm an agency owner and I know like I got to start getting stuff documented. I got to get some SOPs in place. I got to get this stuff off my plate. But when you're still doing a really lot of customization with your offers, this person, it's okay if they get that, and this client can have this, and stuff is swirling around in your head, and only you, the agency owner, knows just how all the clients like it so, or just how the account manager. It's really, really, really hard to delegate, and it's hard to do it
Uh,
effectively. And then this is where we start seeing symptoms like scope creep, where they're, oh, well, you did it for that client, so I was going to do it for this client. Oh, well, we did those social posts over here, so I thought it was totally fine to now do some more over here. And it creates all of this confusion. And then the
yes.
agency owner's going, no, like that's not, we don't do that for everybody. They're not paying for that. Right? So there's just a real lack of clarity about what's involved there. And so the more we can start to create clarity and create standards, it makes it much easier for us to stay in scope with our projects, which means we're not going over budget, we're not burning out team members. And the other beautiful thing that starts to happen is you stop fielding all the questions because it's
Yes.
really clear what I'm supposed to do, what is allowed with this program, what are these clients' expectations. And when that does feel a little all over the place, it's really not surprising that your team members are saying, hey, can I do these social graphics? Hey, do you want to look at this report before I send it? Do you want to be on this call? Because they have a lot of apprehension. They're not sure. And they're like, gosh, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to overpromise. I don't want to underdeliver. I'm feeling like I got to run everything by the agency owner. So you can see how when offers are really clear, deliverables are really buttoned up, timetables are we really know what our budgets are. Now, me as your team member, I feel really good about making some decisions, working independently, and really understanding what's going on here. And because we've done a good job communicating these clearly defined offers to our client, they're not asking for things that aren't included. They're not asking for rushes or favors or, hey, can you do this one more thing? So the offers, like having your offers very tightly scoped and really clear is just such an important piece of this equation.
Yeah. And you're making me think about like my past and like dealing with the team and how I've dialed in some processes.
Yeah.
But you're so right. When there's different nuances with different clients, it can cause confusion with the team.
Hmm.
You have it in your head,
Yeah.
which is all fine, but you
Hmm.
can't understand why everyone doesn't have it in their head. And obviously, 100%. And so when it comes to your uh you said pipeline,
Hmm.
how does that impact the agency owner and those four legs in the table?
Yeah, so it's really important too when again, they're all working together. If I'm looking at my offers, I'm looking at team capacity, I'm looking at what we can hire. I really need to have an idea of what is coming, right? Like that will help me manage capacity. That will help me manage cash flow is to understand what's coming. understanding how many offers I can sell at a time, how many clients can I onboard at a time, and then understanding your sales process and how that moves into client onboarding. Because as the agency owner, you should be doing the selling and we're going to get there, right? Not everybody's there now, but ultimately we're getting there where now you're passing off to an account manager. So just having a lot of clarity about what your sales funnel looks like, what that process looks like, because we don't want to lift you out of all the client work and then what, right? Like we need to have the plan in place for that sustainable scaling, and that's going to come from having a clear pipeline and processes in place so that we don't, like you said, market starts taking off, what should feel like good things. And all of a sudden we're looking around like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what to do. This is too much. How many of these people can I onboard? Where do they fit? What does this look like? And then we also don't want the opposite where you're like, great, I have all of this free time and I hired this new team member. We got all these processes in place. And now I'm like 3 to 4 months out from filling, right, my pipeline, getting some clients queued up. So we want to move these things like evenly, right? Like we want to be stabilizing in an even way so that we don't end up in a bad financial situation.
I like how you have that full approach because typically when you hear, running an agency and getting any outside help, you automatically think hiring and then your processes.
Mhm.
But like you said, it's more than that. There are other pieces that impact that flow and your time. Um, and so growing the team obviously is and delegating is a big
Mhm.
part of releasing that workload,
Yeah.
but it can be so tricky, right? With a fine line of like, okay, this is going to cost me, obviously.
Hmm.
And then when do you do it? When do you not do it? And the how do you do it? And there's like
Yeah.
the onboarding, the process. There's so many pieces. It can feel super overwhelming. Like I know I need help, but I don't know how.
Yes. And not only do I not know how, I don't know who, right? Like I don't know
Mm,
the who is. A lot of times I get that question. We need help, but who is the missing piece, right? And then, of course, there is some of that financial concern, and you get yourself stuck sometimes too, where you're
mm.
like, I need more help to take on more clients, but I need more money to hire more help, which is again why I really like to have pipeline a part of this whole process, that we're always feeling good about that and always focused on sales and growth. Now, with that being said, coming back to team, a big question is often the who, what are they going to be doing? And it's really common in a lot of the agencies I work with are multi six figure. Like there's just a couple of moments where there's just a lot of tight growing pains as you're moving
Yeah.
your way through those six figures and getting up into upper six figures and trying to hit that $1 million mark. And there are definitely phases where I would say certain team members may be wearing more than one hat. But what I inevitably see is a hodgepodge of job duties, responsibilities, and skills, and they're just peppered all over the place, right? They're like, well, Rachel is our marketing strategist. She also does some of our design work. She does the invoicing and she schedules all our client meetings. And you're like, pump the brakes. Like, what is happening with Rachel, right? Like,
Poor
okay,
girl.
I know. Like maybe Rachel can be marketing strategist and also is like really good at Canva and can be whipping up graphics for us. Okay, maybe in an ideal situation, these are two separate roles where you have a strategic mindset and an implementer, right? But at this stage of the game, we might need someone pulling double duty. But should they also be like invoicing and scheduling and like in a very administrative role? No. So what I encourage agency owners to do is actually make yourself an org chart
Oh,
and figure out like this is where I'm going to and put and maybe Rachel is in two of those slots. Like maybe right now Rachel is an account manager and she's also designer. But as it grows, Rachel sits squarely in account manager and we know we need to hire a designer now. So Rachel's name may be in two spots there, but it helps you see where this is going, right? And same
yeah.
thing, like you may have an account manager who's also your project manager, and overseeing like maybe several projects in addition to their own little projects, that's okay. But we don't want to, like, we don't want them straying too far, though, right? Like we said, like, we don't want our implementer mixed up with our strategy, mixed up with our admin, mixed up with our bookkeeper, right? Like, let's work to have some semblance here and rework things. But making that org chart is just so powerful. And for a lot of agency owners, what that typically looks like is you have some sort of account lead. This is often your strategic person, your strategic thinker. Sometimes there is a more junior person in there, and they're helping with task management, meetings, corralling client needs, and then like your implementer. So they're pitching, they're creating assets, or they're your designer, they're creating content, like whatever those peoples are. You'll may have some implementers. And then sometimes you have a project manager that goes above all of those, if that's making sense.
Yeah, and it's just being really clear on what the roles are and who's filling them. Um, and at least nowadays, it's like it's not like you need a full-time staff person. Like we're
Right.
all online. There's contractors,
Exactly.
freelance, part-time, whatever. So
Exactly.
that I found super helpful on finding like
Mhm.
specific skill sets, and they
Yes.
fill that one job. Um, but there always are, a couple of people that kind of like, you're amazing, she can do it all.
Yes. And then I would say I have a watch out for this because I see this happen a lot too, is as an agency grows, changes, maybe they are shifting their offers or their ideal clients, be very careful about creating positions for people you like. And this is a major misstep a lot of agency owners make is they have a team member who had been working with them for maybe even a long time at the start. Or maybe they were able to keep up with the pace, but now your agency and your clientele has outgrown their skill set, their strategic level. And I'm never an advocate for firing people. I've never encouraged my
Fine.
agency owners. That's not what this is about. But just be very, very careful if you're also saying, like, "Ah, where do I fit Rachel in this equation?" That's time. Poor Rachel, whoever, all the Rachels out there, we love you. We love all the Rachels. But if you're asking yourself that, that's a moment to reflect on, does this person still have a spot in your agency and does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone always says, "Oh, you're starting to like have growing pains, hire an OBM or hire a project manager." I hear this all the time.
Yeah.
What say you about that response?
I got lots to say about that
I bet you do.
response. I see two common mistakes, potentially three, when agencies are getting to this point. They do think I just need to hire someone to come in as like an OBM and they'll write the SOPs and they'll manage the things. Usually that doesn't work. It just usually doesn't work because it is not being viewed in this very holistic process, right?
Right.
Like I have a four piece framework for a reason. These all work together. And to hire somebody to come in and document broken processes, inefficient workflows, programs that aren't standardized and changing constantly is just going to be immensely frustrating. And what you're going to find is this person is not, they're going to be frustrated too. They're not
Yes.
going to have a lot to document. They're going to end up documenting things that you can find a YouTube video for, right? Like how to set up a Facebook ad. If you're hiring somebody to do that, they should have that skill set, right? Pitching
Yeah.
podcasts, like they should have some
Yep.
basis of
Yep.
understanding. Like they should have that mindset to know how to execute that work. And so that typically falls really flat. And
Mhm.
then you spent all this money, and
Yeah.
SOPs can become this monster that you just keep feeding. And then they
Seen
go
that.
off into the Google Drive to, rot away and nobody looks at them.
I know.
So you need to find somebody who's going to look at your agency from a holistic approach. They should be asking you questions about your offers. They should be asking you questions about your org chart. They should be asking you about your tools. What do your tools look like? What's set up in there? What do your workflows look like? Then we start thinking about documentation and getting processes in place. So Look for somebody who's going to take a holistic approach, not come in and just clean up your Asana or write your
Right.
SOPs. That is not a comprehensive approach, and every time it will fall flat.
Well said. And as you were saying that, I can think of a couple of clients that have fallen victim to that. And yeah, it just ended up kind of being chaotic and overwhelming. So that is a great tip. Um, what kind of KPI should we be monitoring? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, how do you know when something's broken in those four legs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I people either love this or hate this, and it's time tracking. I think time tracking is imperative at these growing phases of an agency. And there's obviously a lot of nuances, a lot to be said about there, but you have got to have a handle on how much time your team is taking to execute tasks and projects. And this will shed so much light on your offers as well, like what you should keep, what you should let go of. Same thing with your clients. It will help you tighten scope. It will help you tighten deliverables. It will help you make sure you're pricing accordingly so there's room for profit. Because remember, we want to get you out of the client work. We can't do that if the profit margins are razor thin. Like we need space in there for you to be an expense for the agency. You should not be doing client work. And so having that is so, so important. So to start, just get people tracking time and get clarity. Make sure they're doing it fully, right? That,
Yes.
if they have 20 hours, they should have roughly 20 hours, especially if they're an hourly person, they should have that 20 hours. If you've got someone in a full-time position or part-time, obviously, there's some flex on that. They need a snack, they need to eat lunch. We're going to bounce between timers a little bit, but they should be getting close and watch out for things like, oh, I had 17 hours of admin time. Okay, you probably were lumping a lot of things under admin time that should have been allocated towards client work or something else. So even just start by getting a really clear handle on that. And even if you can just start with like, this was for a client, this was truly like administrative time, and this was work on the agency, even if you can start there, that's great. And then you can start to drill down deeper on, okay, from the client work, how much was spent on pitching, follow up, calls with clients, strategizing. You can drill down from there as you get more comfortable with it. But that's something I recommend everybody start and be checking weekly. Don't let too much time go by before you look back and go, oh, so and so has, 70% admin time because they just keep clicking the timer on and moving, right?
I know.
And then you want to start looking at profitability. And I would say, don't stress out about that. I know sometimes thinking about finances or profitability or this type can feel intense, but if you're time tracking, what is the client paying you? Minus any potential hard expenses associated with that, divided by number of hours worked. Like, what's my hourly rate? What am I coming in at? After I take it, right? Like, you can do expenses divided by money in. Like, it's very straightforward. Just do that and start to get a feel for where you're falling. And it is important to do it like per client because inevitably I see I'll work with an agency owner and they're like, so and so is our best client. They pay us the most money. If they need anything, we get it to them. When they sit right, like they're ready. And these clients, oh, they're really easy. I don't worry about them too much, but they don't pay us as much as the big client. When we start running the numbers, I'm like, cool. For your big client, you're working at $45 an hour. For these, oh, little clients we don't worry about, they're at $160 an hour. Like, hmm, like big
Interesting.
discrepancy there on profit. And that, is an extreme example. And I have seen some extreme examples, but it's often very, very enlightening to start looking at those data points and saying, because sometimes the big client isn't quite as big as you think it is.
Yeah. Good volume, but what is your profit margin for
Right,
it?
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I love that you look at the numbers, sales coming in, because all of those pieces do impact your ability to scale and profit and grow and have less stress and have a team that loves what they do
Yeah.
and are effective and efficient. And Yeah, there's so many pieces. So I love your approach. Now, how do people work with you? How can they find you? And if you have any resources to give, yeah, feel free.
Yeah, yeah. So you can find me over at youragencyauthority.com. If you go to youragencyauthority.com/call, that'll give you an opportunity to connect with me. Also, love to connect with people on LinkedIn. Find me there. Happy to answer some questions too. If you just want to shoot me a DM, I can often offer some insight there after just a few questions and get you moving in the right direction. And I just want to say too, I know this stage of growth and agency life can feel very confusing and very overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be, right? There really are some tried and true things that can be put in place, like this framework. Look at things like this. There are things we can put in place to create that clarity. And sometimes what feels like a heavy lift is actually just a few little tweaks, right? Like sometimes it is not burn it all down and restart.
Ooh.
Sometimes, yeah, I think a lot of times it's like, okay, we're going to shift this a little bit. We're going to rework this a little bit. We've got to sprinkle this in, and then things really start gaining momentum.
Nice. I love that you're able to like pinpoint like let's look at this, like ooh, that needs to be changed, because I feel like that's what we all need as agency owners, because
Yeah.
sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. You don't know what's wrong, so you try to fix
Yeah.
the wrong thing and then that blows up in your face. Yeah, so to have
Yes.
someone that just cuts right through and knows what needs to get fixed, I love it.
Yeah, the forest through the trees for sure. I can't tell you how many times, particularly when we're getting down to things like offers or even like team roles. For some reason, these are the two that people really have a hard time like seeing
Hmm.
through. And they'll tell me like, I just don't know how all of these offers can be standardized. Like they are all over the map. And
Right.
within one phone call, they're like, "Oh, actually, I think this is a lot more standardized than I expected." And I'm like, "It is."
Love it.
Same thing with the team. They'll be feeling like, "Gosh, I'm just not really sure who our hire is, who should be doing what." And sometimes it's just a phone call or two, and it
Yeah.
just can create a lot of clarity.
I love it. And can you imagine just like that feeling of like your shoulders dropping and then you
Hmm.
can like maybe actually sleep at night where your head's not spinning?
I know.
That would be
Dare to
amazing.
dream.
Exactly. I so appreciate getting to know you and hearing your tips from an agency owner. And again, I know so many other agency owners out there, people that are growing their agencies within the podcasting space. So I know your tips will be absolutely welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's been great. So I hope that was valuable for you folks. And we'll see you next week on the Leverage Your Podcast show. Ciao.